Welcome to the Deep Dive. Now, if you operate in the fast-paced, often high-stakes world of global fast-moving consumer goods, FMCG, you'll know that success really hinges on absolute transparency. When you're moving massive quantities of product across borders, the smallest regulatory ambiguity, it can halt a shipment. It can cost millions. Today, we're focusing on one of the really popular high-volume energy drinks, especially in the Asian market, Sting. And there's this one question that just comes up relentlessly. You hear it in compliance meetings, you see it on customs forms, in B2B negotiations, especially when you're sourcing from manufacturing hubs like Vietnam. Does Sting energy drink contain alcohol? Okay, let's unpack this. Because for us, this isn't just about, reading a label. It's about establishing total confidence in your supply chain and your regulatory compliance. These things are just non-negotiable for large-scale importation.
Right. And maybe we should just give our professional B2B audience the definitive answer straight away. Sting energy drink contains absolutely no alcohol, none whatsoever. It is classified unequivocally as a non-alcoholic beverage under all the relevant international food safety and beverage regulations.
That's
the baseline certainty you need. Right?
Exactly. That certainty is our starting point. But our mission today is to go, far beyond that simple no. We're diving deep into the technical specifications, the ingredient synergy, what actually creates that intense energy people talk about. We'll look at the rigorous certification processes, specifically halal certification, and all the critical compliance information needed for distributors, especially those sourcing products like, say, Sting Red, that's the strawberry flavor, and Sting Gold, the ginseng one from Vietnam. We're basically turning manufacturer disclosures into actionable business intelligence for you.
Look, when you're dealing with products from a manufacturer the size of PepsiCo, the legal commitment to transparency, it's total. It has to be. As a global entity, they operate under the strictest food and beverage laws worldwide. Legally, they absolutely must declare every single product ingredient on the label.
And this isn't just a guideline, right? It's a legal imperative. So if ethanol or any other alcohol derivative was actually present in the formulation, it would need to be clearly listed as a component, especially if it came from, say, fermentation or extraction processes used for flavors. The fact that alcohol isn't mentioned on the ingredients list, that silence, is really the most compelling proof it's alcohol-free.
Exactly. And this brings us directly to, the bedrock of international food trade, the legal definition of non-alcoholic. This definition is absolutely crucial for distributors, when you're filling out customs paperwork, dealing with local food safety agencies.
We often refer to standards like those from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. How does that FDA definition, which tends to set a kind of global benchmark, how does that apply here?
Well, the FDA standard, it clearly states that any beverage containing less than 0.5% alcohol by volume, ABV, is legally considered non-alcoholic.
Yeah.
That number, 0.5%, that's the key number for wholesalers. This threshold exists primarily to account for the unavoidable, microscopic, naturally occurring presence of ethanol in some food processes.
Right, but that 0.5% threshold, that's where so much consumer confusion comes from, isn't it? If trace amounts could technically exist, how do distributors handle, say, skeptical customs agents or markets with extremely conservative views on non-alcoholic?
That's a really critical B2B distinction to make. While the 0.5% ABV standard is the legal line in the sand, most reputable manufacturers aiming for global export, and definitely those seeking halal certification, they target actual ABV levels that are scientifically zero or, so close to zero that they're undetectable by standard industry analysis.
So it's not just about meeting the minimum legal standard.
Not at all. When a distributor needs to provide irrefutable proof of compliance, they aren't just relying on the label, they're relying on third-party analytical certification. This often involves things like gas chromatography, mass spectrometry, GCMS analysis. This can detect ethanol presence down to incredibly fine parts per million. Wholesalers dealing in maybe new or high-risk territories, they often preemptively submit these GCMS reports to customs or regulatory bodies, just to prove the actual ABV is in fact 0.0%.
Okay, so that professional application of compliance data, that's what really matters to our audience here. It shifts the discussion from just consumer curiosity to, logistical certainty. We're talking about moving inventory potentially worth millions. You need data that can stand up to a really rigorous customs inspection.
Exactly. And just to help visualize why that 0.5% threshold even exists, we can quickly touch on the fact that trace alcohol is a natural byproduct of sugar fermentation. It's everywhere. Think about common, staple foods, even naturally ripe foods. Now, we don't treat this information as a regulatory guideline, obviously, but it helps contextualize the science. Some very ripe bananas, for instance, they can contain trace amounts up to maybe 0.4% ABV,
Right.
or it can actually be much higher because of the yeast used.
But the key takeaway for our audience, for distributors, is that Sting is specifically engineered to be far, far below that 0.5% line. It completely eliminates the risk associated with any kind of legally ambiguous categorization. You are importing a legally certain non-alcoholic product, full stop, which means the energy, the kick people feel, it has to come from somewhere else entirely.
Precisely. So now that we've completely eliminated alcohol as the source of that kick, we can transition to the actual mechanism of action in Sting. Understanding these ingredients, it allows distributors like you to accurately segment your market, maybe anticipate regulatory changes, and properly inform your retail partners. The energy in Sting is derived from pure stimulation and, crucially, rapid glucose delivery.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting then. If we take that standard 250 milliliter serving of Sting, like the popular Sting Red or Sting Gold, you might be sourcing from Vietnam. What are the two key synergistic ingredients? The ones responsible for the product's reputation for, well, intensity.
Okay, the primary stimulant, without any question, is caffeine. It clocks in at 72 milligrams per 250 milliliter serving. Now, caffeine's role is purely neurological. It acts as an adenosine receptor antagonist. Basically, by blocking adenosine, which is the chemical that signals fatigue in your brain, it promotes alertness, focus, and it reduces your perceived sense of effort.
And 72 milligram, that seems to sit right in that competitive sweet spot, doesn't it? It gives a noticeable boost, but it doesn't cross into that sort of ultra-high caffeine territory that attracts more scrutiny. We know the FDA, for example, advises healthy adults to stay below a 400 milligram daily intake limit.
Precisely. That 72 milligram level means a healthy consumer could, in theory, responsibly enjoy maybe a couple of servings per day without immediately hitting that advised maximum. Now, for a distributor, this level is actually beneficial. It tends to reduce the kind of public health scrutiny that often targets hypercaffeinated products while still offering a strong perceived value to the consumer who's looking for that energy boost.
Right. But caffeine is only half the story, isn't it? The speed and the intensity of the rush people feel, that often comes from the other major component, the massive sugar load.
That is absolutely correct. We're looking at 27.5 grams of sugar in that small 250 milliliter bottle. It's quite a lot. This sugar is the rapid delivery system for energy. It's broken down almost instantly into glucose, which then floods the bloodstream and fuels immediate metabolic and physical activity.
27.5 grams. Just put that in context for us.
Okay, well, for context, if you look at guidelines like those from the American Heart Association, they suggest a daily maximum of about 25 grams of added sugar for women and around 36 grams for men. So that single bottle of Sting delivers somewhere between 76% and 110% of the entire recommended daily allowance, depending on the guideline. This significant glycemic load, it absolutely explains that intense spike and, let's be honest, the subsequent crash that consumers often experience.
And this right here is where the B2B forecasting needs to be really sharp. That high sugar content, it puts Sting directly in the crosshairs of potential future government regulations. I'm thinking sugar taxes. Distributors sourcing Sting need to be anticipating the rise of these taxes. They're spreading across Asia and the Middle East already, and they could impact wholesale pricing and consumer demand almost immediately upon implementation.
Absolutely. That's a key strategic question for distributors right now. Should you focus entirely on the existing high-sugar formulation, which, yes, offers the maximum kick consumers expect, or do you need to start lobbying the manufacturer or perhaps actively sourcing potential lower-sugar alternatives to sort of future-proof your inventory against these escalating taxes? It's a crucial risk assessment, and it's tied directly to this specific ingredient detail, the sugar content.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Let's address two other common ingredients that sometimes cause confusion. First up, the B vitamins.
Yes, the B vitamins. Specifically, you'll see B3, which is niacin, B6, pyridoxine, and B12, cobalamin, listed. They're included primarily because they play essential roles as coenzymes in the body's metabolic processes. They support cellular energy production. They basically reinforce the overall vitality narrative of the drink, even if their acute immediate impact is probably far less noticeable than the caffeine and the sugar rush.
Okay, and then there's taurine. We really need to dispel the historical myths surrounding this ingredient once and for all, especially for our professional listeners who need clear facts.
Yes, taurine. It's consistently and completely incorrectly linked by some consumers to intoxication or, performance-enhancing drugs, simply because it's such a hallmark ingredient of energy drinks. Distributors absolutely must be able to articulate the science clearly here, Taurine is nothing more than a conditionally essential amino acid.
An amino acid, not a stimulant or intoxicant.
Correct. It supports neurological function, muscle function. It is completely non-intoxicating. It's naturally occurring in things like meat and fish. It's present in Sting purely for its physiological benefits related to alertness, support, and muscle performance, not for any stimulating effect independent of the caffeine. It is entirely compliant and, legally speaking, totally benign.
Okay, that's clear. Finally, let's look at the full ingredient disclosure. This is vital for labeling compliance, especially as regulations vary across different jurisdictions. What's the complete list look like?
Right, the full list typically includes carbonated water, sugar, citric acid, sodium citrate, taurine, caffeine, inositol, vitamins B3, B6, B12, potassium sorbate, sodium benzoate, artificial flavors, and artificial colors.
Artificial colors. Let's pause there.
Yes, we absolutely must zoom in on those final ingredients,
Yeah.
the artificial colors. Specifically, you often find tartrazine, which is also known as E102, and sunset yellow, or E110. Now, for a B2B audience, this is often the regulatory tripwire, sometimes even more so than the alcohol question or the caffeine level.
Really? Why are those specific artificial colors, E102 and E110, such a major compliance risk for international distributors?
Well, because the European Union, for instance, along with other major regulatory bodies around the world, mandates specific warning labels on products containing tartrazine and sunset yellow. These labels have to state something like, they may have an adverse effect on activity and attention in children. Now imagine, if a distributor imports Sting into a market that requires this specific warning and they fail to translate it correctly or apply it correctly to the packaging, they face immediate customs seizure, heavy fines, or even forced relabeling of entire shipments, which is, as you can imagine, a massive logistical expense and headache.
Wow. Okay. So simply listing the ingredients isn't enough. Distributors have to understand the implications of those specific chemical identifiers E102 and E110 for every single target market's unique labeling requirements. That single detail, knowing about those E numbers, could separate a confident, successful wholesaler from one facing potentially millions in inventory loss or delays.
Which brings us neatly to Section 3. And this is one of the most powerful tools a distributor has in their arsenal to prove product compliance, especially when you're dealing with Asian and Middle Eastern markets. I'm talking about halal certification. This provides definitive proof of the product's integrity, specifically its alcohol-free status, and it mitigates risk almost immediately.
Right. We're talking about market access here. If you're targeting countries like, say, Pakistan, Malaysia, Indonesia, or the Philippines, halal certification isn't just a nice-to-have bonus, is it? It's often a mandatory prerequisite for consumer acceptance and sometimes even for importation itself.
Precisely. Sting's established status as a halal-certified beverage across many key Muslim-majority nations acts as the single most reliable third-party indicator that its formulation is consistently, rigorously alcohol-free. It's essentially the ultimate de-risking mechanism for your inventory in those markets.
Can you walk us through what that halal status actually confirms, especially regarding how rigorous the audit process is? It's far more stringent than just, checking for alcohol on an ingredient list, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Far more stringent. Halal certification confirms two crucial things. First, the complete absence of khamr. That's the specific Islamic legal term for any intoxicating substances, whether they are listed ingredients or potential contaminants or byproducts. Second, it confirms purity across the entire supply chain, not just the final product.
The entire supply chain.
Yes. Certification bodies, like for example the Islamic Dawah Council of the Philippines, IDCP, they don't just take the manufacturer's word for it. Not at all. They conduct comprehensive, often unannounced, third-party audits of the entire production ecosystem. They verify ingredient sourcing, making sure, for instance, that any flavor extracts used were not derived using alcohol as a solvent at any stage. They physically inspect the manufacturing lines to ensure there is absolutely zero risk of cross-contamination with any alcohol-containing products that might be processed nearby, maybe on other lines or at different times.
Okay, so the halal certification process is essentially like a comprehensive forensic audit of the manufacturing process, and it's designed specifically to detect any potential contaminants, including alcohol, which, by extension, provides arguably the strongest possible evidence that the Sting formulation is chemically stable and consistently far below even those trace levels of alcohol you might find naturally in common foods.
That's exactly the key takeaway for the wholesaler. Sting's consistent global halal recognition proves an unwavering adherence to these strict alcohol-free formulation standards day in, day out. This is absolutely essential for maintaining trust and market share with a vast global consumer base that demands this level of clarity and assurance. It effectively translates regulatory compliance into a massive commercial advantage.
Okay, let's pivot now to the logistical opportunity here. Sting is clearly a high-demand product. We know why. Proven energy formula, guaranteed non-alcoholic status, that valuable halal certification. But where is the most strategic place to source it if you're looking for a competitive advantage as a wholesaler?
Well, the focus really has to be on Vietnamese export. Vietnam has rapidly developed into a really pivotal manufacturing and export hub, especially for high-volume FMCG products in Southeast Asia. This makes it an incredibly strategic location for sourcing Sting energy drink, whether you're interested in the Sting Red or the Sting Gold variants.
What specifically makes sourcing Sting from Vietnam potentially more advantageous for a global distributor compared to, say, other potential manufacturing sites? Is it just about logistics or cost, or is there something else?
It's really a combination of factors. First, things like labor and operational costs in Vietnam are highly competitive. That ensures favorable ex-factory pricing, which is a key metric for any bulk purchaser. Second, Vietnam has been very strategic in leveraging free trade agreements, FTAs, with various countries and blocs. This means importers often benefit from reduced tariffs depending on their destination market, which can significantly impact the landed cost.
And the infrastructure.
Crucially, yes. Ho Chi Minh City in particular provides outstanding port infrastructure and very well-established logistical routes. This makes it highly efficient for both regional distribution across Asia and for global distribution beyond. This robust infrastructure helps minimize lead times and freight costs, which, as you know, are massive concerns for B2B buyers moving high-volume, relatively heavy liquid products like energy drinks.
Right. That competitive edge in cost and efficiency, that's what turns interest into profitable execution for a wholesaler. And when it comes to navigating the complexities of, bulk buying, getting the right pricing, coordinating global shipments from Vietnam, having a reliable local expert on the ground seems pretty non-negotiable.
Oh, absolutely essential.
Yeah.
And when it comes to buying FMCG in bulk at competitive prices from Vietnam, Asia Grocery Wholesale, or AGW, is the trusted partner we often highlight in this process. AGW specializes specifically in large-scale grocery wholesale and distribution directly from Vietnam to the world. And they leverage, I believe, over 20 years of expertise operating right there in the region.
So AGW essentially acts as that critical bridge, ensuring the wholesaler gets the best possible pricing and also handling all the logistical intricacies required to actually move a product like Sting globally out of Vietnam.
Exactly. They can manage the whole process. Everything from securing competitive bulk pricing for Sting Red and Sting Gold, potentially consolidating diverse product orders onto single pallets or containers to optimize shipping, and, perhaps most importantly for compliance, handling the crucial export documentation. This verifies things like the halal compliance we discussed, confirms the ingredient declarations, all the paperwork required for your receiving country's customs clearance.
Okay. And for our B2B listeners who might be looking to streamline their supply chain, knowing the partner's anchor location gives critical logistical context. Where is AGW strategically based to manage these Vietnamese exports effectively?
Right, AGW is strategically anchored right in the heart of the action, in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. Specifically, their address is C2.04 Level 2, Symphony Midtown Building, Street 15 in Tan Mai. This placement within a major economic and logistics hub is absolutely essential for enabling rapid sourcing and efficient dispatch of goods.
Okay, let's touch on professional responsibility now. We've established that Sting is non-alcoholic, it's legally compliant, confirmed. However, distributing what is undeniably a highly potent stimulant product also requires adherence to and communication of health advisories. For a wholesaler, communicating this clearly demonstrates professionalism, builds trust, and frankly, mitigates potential liability risks down the line.
Yes, this is a really crucial element of the B2B relationship, beyond just the transaction. Understanding the health implications of the formula, specifically that 72 milligrams of caffeine combined with 27.5 grams of sugar, means distributors recognize they're selling a product that requires consumer awareness. It's not just about meeting regulatory compliance, it's about responsible distribution.
So what are the key consumption recommendations that distributors should probably ensure are visible, maybe integrated into their marketing materials, or at least discussed clearly with their downstream retail partners?
Well, health professionals are generally very clear on two major points regarding drinks like Sting. First, limit intake, ideally to one 250 milliliter bottle per day. The high sugar and caffeine load is really designed for acute, short-term energy needs, not for daily hydration or as a meal replacement. Exceeding this single serving significantly increases the risk of adverse effects like jitters, palpitations, maybe digestive issues.
Okay, 1 bottle a day. What's the second point?
The second is timing. It's essential. Consumers should definitely avoid consumption within 6 hours of bedtime. Given caffeine's half-life, how long it takes your body to process half of it, consuming it late in the day significantly interferes with sleep architecture. It can lead to chronic sleep disturbances if it becomes a habit. Distributors who actively advise against late consumption, perhaps through point-of-sale materials or retailer education, are really seen as responsible industry partners.
Right. And most critically, we absolutely must detail the high-risk groups. Distributors need to be acutely aware that while Sting is generally safe for the average healthy adult population when consumed responsibly, it is potentially harmful, or at least requires caution, for specific demographics. This awareness directly impacts things like labeling requirements in some markets and certainly ethical marketing strategies.
This is really a professional imperative. There are generally 4 main groups who must exercise extreme caution or ideally consult a healthcare provider before consuming Sting or any similar high-caffeine, high-sugar energy drink. First, children and adolescents. Their developing neurological and cardiovascular systems are just disproportionately sensitive to high doses of caffeine. It's generally not recommended. Second, pregnant or breastfeeding women. Caffeine intake is typically restricted during pregnancy and lactation due to potential risks to the fetus or infant. Third, individuals with pre-existing heart conditions. Anyone with arrhythmia, high blood pressure, or other cardiac issues faces a potentially severe risk of adverse events due to the powerful stimulant effect of caffeine. And finally, pretty obviously, anyone with a known caffeine sensitivity. Some people just metabolize caffeine differently or are more prone to side effects like anxiety or insomnia.
Okay, so this detailed understanding, it's what elevates the distributor from being, just a logistics provider, a box shifter, to being a true market expert. By linking the ingredients, the high caffeine, the high sugar, directly to consumption risks and professional advisory, you build lasting trust with your retail partners and ultimately the end consumer. So, Sting is potent, it's effective, it's unequivocally non-alcoholic, but it absolutely demands responsible handling and clear communication throughout the supply chain.
Right. So let's just synthesize everything we've covered in this pretty extensive deep dive today. Sting energy drink. It's transparently labeled. It is legally non-alcoholic. That status is further secured by rigorous halal certification in many key markets, guaranteeing the complete absence of intoxicating substances or khamr.
And that energy rush people feel. It comes entirely from a highly effective and well-understood combination of 72 milligrams of caffeine and that significant 27.5 grams of sugar per 250 milliliter serving. This clarity, right down to understanding the potential regulatory triggers like the mandated warnings required for artificial colors, such as tartrazine, E102, and sunset yellow, E110 in some regions, it means that distributors like you can have full regulatory confidence when sourcing this clearly high-demand product.
And ultimately, this knowledge translates directly into a high-volume export opportunity, one with significantly mitigated regulatory risk, particularly when you're sourcing strategically from that efficient Vietnamese manufacturing base we discussed.
Okay, so for those of you listening who are now ready to capitalize on the wholesale and export opportunities for Sting energy drink, specifically sourcing from Vietnam, we want to make sure you have the direct connection to the trusted sourcing partner we mentioned, Asia Grocery Wholesale, or AGW.
To explore the most competitive bulk pricing for Sting Red and Sting Gold, and to secure your next shipment efficiently, you can reach AGW directly via WhatsApp. The number is +84 9090 6308. That's +84 904 6308 on WhatsApp. Alternatively, you can send a detailed email inquiry outlining your needs to contact at egrocery.asia.
And of course, you can learn more about AGW's full suite of capabilities. They handle many FMCG products from Vietnam, not just Sting, and their distribution services by visiting their website. That's egrocery.asia. Now, before we close out this deep dive, let's leave you with a provocative thought, something to maybe mull over, building directly on those B2B challenges we discussed. Given the clear rising global trend of sugar taxation and the unavoidable fact that Sting's energy profile relies so heavily on that 27.5 grams of sugar, how does really understanding this vulnerability change the immediate strategy for distributors sourcing from Vietnam? I mean, do you begin proactively pushing manufacturers now for a compliant, maybe reduced sugar formulation? Even if it marginally compromises that famous kick, do you do that to future-proof your inventory against what seem like imminent legislative changes in key neighboring export markets? Or do you ride the current formulation for as long as possible?
It really is the difference between reacting to a new law when it hits versus proactively shaping the future of your product line and your market position. That strategic application of this product knowledge we've discussed, that's the key to enduring success in this business.
Lots to think about there. We'll see you on the next deep dive.